morphing with society enter our time slots and addresses. You know, we say, well, we've got to do this to keep up with culture. And don't get me wrong, I believe in being culturally relevant. But I also believe in making sure that we are biblical and that we stand on what God has written. And if we start saying things like, well, I know that's a tough statement, so let's just not make a big deal about that because people won't be attracted. I think there comes a point where the church is supposed to not just adapt to culture, and that's fine, but we're also supposed to transcend culture. You see, Paul said to be in the world, not of the world. Yet, I'm afraid that we have spent more time on the second part of that than the first. We don't want to be worldly, so we just stay away from the world. But Jesus in John 9 and verse 5 says that while I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. While I'm in it. Jesus did not confine his religion to the temple. Matter of fact, you can go through the 4 Gospels, and very rarely will you even find him in it. You find him in the world, eating with sinners, healing those who needed him, and being light. And in this passage, that is what he's calling us to do. We are called to let our lights shine. And it's not just on Sunday morning. Let me tell you something. We must shine in this world. And I'm going to tell you something. It's not that difficult to shine. What Jesus is calling us to do is not difficult. Because the world is so diametrically opposed to kingdom values that if we start embracing kingdom values, folks, we will stick out like a sore thumb. I mean, you just think about the kingdom values that he shared just a few verses prior in the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Now, if you start acting poor in spirit in this society, no, that's not how you're supposed to be. We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to be powerful. We're supposed to be self-assurant. Jesus said poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the meek in this look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me society. Blessed are the merciful in this cutthroat society. Blessed are the peacemakers. Oh, church, just look at the news. Peacemakers are blessed. Blessed are the persecuted. I don't want to be persecuted. If we live seriously those kingdom values, we will shine. You see, Jesus in Luke 11:36 says, therefore, if your whole body is full of light and no part of it dark, it will be completely lighted as when the light of a lamp shines on you. In other words, when we begin to live kingdom values, when we begin to live like salt and light, we will shine. So what keeps us from shining? Why isn't the church shining like we should? Well, the immediate answer that we want to give, and maybe some of you thought right away in your mind, is sin. That sounds like a reasonable answer. But I'm not sure that's the right answer. And here's why. Our ability to live kingdom lives in spite of our sin, to me, actually makes us shine even brighter. It shows that the grace of God covers our sin, and we're still able to be what he's called us to be despite ourselves. I think what keeps us from shining is a lack of focus. We've been distracted. The church of Christ has been distracted. We have been distracted by opinions. We have been distracted by traditions. We have been distracted by disunity, and as a result, we are declining. My friend Steve Cummings held a gospel meeting one time, and he told me the story, and the story's actually in the book we wrote together, but he told me the story one time of when he was doing a gospel meeting at a small church, and he was talking with the preacher over lunch one day, and he'd been there a few days, and he'd kind of observed this church. They were scared of trying anything, scared to do anything. They'd had problems in the past, and because of that, they were just not wanting to really upset the apple cart, as it were. And the preacher said to him over lunch, and Steve said that he wishes he would have bit his tongue with the response that he gave him. The preacher said, we may be a small church, but we're a sound church. And Steve's response was, yeah, sound asleep. Surprised the preacher let him preach the last sermon that night. But we have been. We've been asleep at the wheel. We sing the song, Jesus, take the wheel. Maybe we want him to take the wheel because we're sound asleep at it. We're distracted. And let me tell you something. Unless the church can begin to be different, we can't make a difference. Did you hear that? We've got to be different before we can make a difference. But when we shine, it's noticeable. It's noticeable. Let me read verse 16 again, and then I want to make a couple comments. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Okay, I want to play a little game here. I want you to think for a minute. What if I, being the new preacher here, decided that I was going to find out where everybody worked, where everybody went to school, and what restaurants you went to, and what social clubs you were a part of. And I decided I was going to go start interviewing the people you interact with on a daily basis. Not going to do that. Let's just say that I did. Everybody's like, why did we bring this guy? Let's just say for the sake of argument I did. You know what I think I'd hear? I think I'd hear some glowing comments. I think I'd hear about times that you brought food over when the wife got home from the hospital. I think I'd hear about times that you cut up limbs out of their yard after a big storm. I think I'd hear about times that you babysat the children while the man had to rush his wife to the emergency room. And I think that for the most part, people would say, they're good people. Those are good people right there. You think I'm probably right on that? I think I am. That's my first impression. So let's think about that passage again. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and call you good people. That's not what it says, is it? It says, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and praise your Father which is in heaven. Now, why on earth would they do that? Why would they make any connection between your good works and God? Because a lot of people do good works. I've got atheist friends who do good works. So why would they make any connection between your good works and God? Here's the answer, and the answer is so simple it's profound. Not only must we shine brightly, but we must articulate clearly. Peter said, always be prepared to give a reason, an answer for the hope that is within us to everyone who asks you. Why would they ask you? Well, they would ask you because you shined brightly. But once you shine brightly and they ask you, you must be ready to articulate clearly, to give a reason for the hope that is within us. You know what this implies? This implies that they've seen this hope, that they've seen this light, that they've experienced this salt, and that they come up to you and they say, let me ask you, what's different about you? Why do you do the things you do? Why did you do that for me? And then we answer, well, it's just the right thing to do. Have a good day. No. That's where we give a reason for the hope that is within us. I want to wrap up. I think I already said that once, but when a preacher says finally, he doesn't mean immediately. I want to wrap up by looking at this question. Dr. James Thompson asked the question, how does the church present the good news to a culture that seems to be so inoculated against it? Well, I'm going to answer this question more deeply in a few weeks when we talk about the church in transition, but I want to say this for now. 3 quick things. We must be relevant. We must be relevant. Our goal must be to describe the gospel of Jesus in ways that are clearly relevant to contemporary circumstances without minimizing the hard truths that are taught and demanded of us. You know, we've got to be relevant. It doesn't take too much to find out whether we're relevant or not. I mean, you walk in a foyer of many churches of Christ, and it's like you've stepped in a time machine. I mean, it is. And you're thinking I'm talking about you, and I got to tell you, yeah, your time machine goes back to about maybe 1995 when you step into the foyer. But church, I've walked into foyers, and you feel like you're in 1963 or 1953. With the giant tract rack on the wall, and in the puke green carpet. Oh wait, don't say puke from the pulpit. Okay, you know what I'm saying. And we say, well, those things shouldn't matter. No, they shouldn't matter to us at all, should they? No, not to us a bit. But we're already reached. It's not us we're trying to reach. And we're dealing with people the way they are, not the way we want them to become. So we have to be relevant. We have to be relevant. And we must adapt. Now, I'm not saying change the message, but it might be that we need to change some methods. When I was looking to come to this congregation, I had a conversation with another church in a different area of the country. And I was talking to them just like I talked to you about evangelistic methods. And one of the men spoke up and he said, one of the things we use most often is the Jewel Miller film strips. Praise God, the Jewel Miller film strips did a lot of great work in churches of Christ for many, 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 many years. But you start showing them to a 21-year-old, they're like, what's a film strip? And that's just the way it is. And so we have to adapt. And even some of the things, even some of the language that we use just doesn't work with today's society. Do you know for sure, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that if the Lord were to come back today, that you would die and be with him in eternity? Well, what's eternity? They don't even know. See, it used to be that people had at least some biblical knowledge, and we could ask questions like that, and they'd understand. We're in a different time. Well, what is your church? Well, we speak where the Bible speaks, and we keep silent where it's silent. Why? You believe that all that's true anyway? We do, but they don't. So where do we start? We adapt. We become culturally relevant, and we do that with a very strong key word. And we find it in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 22 and 23. And that is, we must be all things to all people. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do this for the sake of the gospel, that I might share in its blessings. I want you to notice 2 words there. Become. The root word is what? Be. It's not all about what we say. It's about who we are. This is what I want you to be. And what else did he say? I do. You hear that? Be and do. Salt and light. That's how we make a difference. That's how we become culturally relevant. And you might say, well, I'm not good at evangelism, and I'm not good at holding a Bible study with people, and I'm afraid that they may ask a question that I can't answer. That's okay. Because let me tell you something. The growth of this church is not contingent upon what you say. It is contingent upon what you become and what you do. You see, God has given us a task, but He's also given us the tool. And you know what the tool is? You. Salt. Light. My wife and I love lighthouses. And if ever we're near the coast, we try to find lighthouses. And as we lived in California, we found as many as we possibly could. And we would go to those lighthouses, we'd tour them, we'd look at them, we'd take pictures of them. This was the last lighthouse we got to visit before we moved here. And it's off the coast of Northern California near a little town called Fort Bragg. Not the base, but a little city. And we found this little lighthouse, and something about this lighthouse stood out to me as completely different than the rest of the lighthouses we had seen. It worked. Every other lighthouse that I've ever been to is not functional. They don't work anymore. The lights don't shine. And it was amazing to me because I thought about the fact that how different this lighthouse looked. This lighthouse looked so much different because it was actually shining. You see, I think as people drive up and down the Christian coast looking at lighthouses, they see too many of them that aren't functioning. They aren't turned on. You get the point? The cool thing about this lighthouse is I took this picture at dusk. You see the fog in the background. The sun started going down, and we were walking back to the car. And I'm telling you, the darker it got, the brighter that light shined. It doesn't matter how dark this world gets. You keep shining. And if you're not shining this morning, if your light isn't bright, if you're not being salt, you need to ask yourself a very valuable question that we asked earlier. If all of a sudden I stopped believing in God, would my neighbors and my coworkers notice any difference in my life? And if your answer is if you reflect on your life and you say, you know what? I don't know that they'd see a difference. Then I'm telling you this morning, I'm begging you, you need to respond. You need to come to the front. You need to let us pray for you and pray over you and help you, because the growth of this church is not contingent upon what I say from up here. It is contingent upon how you shine out there. If you need to respond, won't you come? While together we stand and sing.